Got it. Hi. Hi. Oh wait, hold on. Actually, be right back.
I'll do the intro for you. Cool. Thanks everyone for coming. This is the first session of homeschool second semester. Thanks to Lacuna for hosting. Today's talk is by Devin Kenny, who's an artist, musician, and curator working across several mediums. Hailing from the south side of Chicago, he relocated to New York, began studies at Cooper Union, and he has since continued his practice through the Bruce High Quality Foundation University, Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, SOMA Mexico, the Whitney ISP, and performances at various art and music venues in New York, Chicago, LA, and internationally. These include Het Roode Bioscoop, Biquini Wax, Artspace Auckland, REDCAT, MoMa PS1, Creek City, and Santos Party House. He received his
also, fuck Santos. Sorry.
Santos. Okay. Good. Thank you for updating. And he received his MFA in 2013 in the New Genres Department at UCLA, and is also an alum of the Whitney Independent Study Program. And his talk today is called the Griot, the Parrhesiac, the Cannibal, the Oversharer, the Artist, the Realest, triad. Thank you so much, Devin.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to begin. I'm gonna give an intro to some of my practice and also sketch out a couple ideas, and hopefully we can have like a chat or something after that. Okay, cool. All right. There are three pending on the edge of the water at the beach. None will swim. One person doesn't want to swim because they do it professionally and just want some time out of the water to reflect. The second person doesn't want to ruin their hair. The third doesn't know how to swim. At a glance, one could say these three people are doing the same thing, standing on the beach, not swimming. But each is doing it for a different reason. It can be argued that not doing and doing are very different activities, but I evoke this scenario to address the way I use pre-existing material or modes of distribution in my work. Not necessarily as a so-called appropriation tactic with the intent of undercoding that which is cited, but as a means of short-circuiting the road understandings or using the power of these components for a different end than they were intended originally. Around freshman year in high school, I began recording music with a computer mic, used for LAN gaming, plugged it into the line in of my tower, or by making Fruity Loops beats and putting a micro cassette recorder up next to it, almost kissing the gray dusty foam of my speakers. This was after a few years of learning to do 6 steps and backspins from animated GIFs, learning how to make ink and various permanent writing implements, downloading miscellaneous MP3s and desktop backgrounds for anime series. Only about 10 people in my high school enjoyed such things. I thought myself a rebel by wearing Velcro shoes, baggy corduroys, thrift store button-up shirts, and cardigans, and skateboarding. Hip-hop is about defining your own spirit, right? Defining your own style, right? I'd wear a navy blue Gap jacket with a single pyramid stud in the lapel. Post-punk, I'd laugh to myself. I was working to expand the orthodoxy of the subcultures in which I was a participant. Putting stencils in your wild style, tagging hearts around your competitors' names written in reverse, graffiti with just married window chalk or bingo dabbers from the dollar store, wheat pasting posters without the name, word, logo, tag, moniker. I was getting into art more seriously at that time as well. Fine art, I'm referring to. Modernism especially. But I do remember borrowing a videotape from the Big Central Library, Harold Washington Library, that featured, amongst others, a guy who would just cook meals for people in his apartment as art. I didn't get it. I wasn't really into it, but it helped create a constellation for me that spelled out art as a kind of resistance, direct action on the liminal level, symbolically or otherwise producing and exhibiting new models. People on MySpace and Friendster had my first crushes in MSN chat rooms and on AIM Instant Messenger. Well, I guess that's redundant. It was in some ways a pathetic, prophetic time, and I'm haunted by it in Vaporwave and elsewhere. Those who were children in the coke-addled 80s of unchecked white privilege and Cold War paranoia I learned of through VH1 and Behind the Music were probably haunted by the electroclash of Peaches, La Tigra, Julie Ruin, and others, I'm sure. It was in the early 2000s when I started thinking of being a conceptual artist or imagining art outside of a single scholastic discipline, but rather an approach to life. Rapping over beats made in an Easter egg program of Game Boy Camera, applying what I would later learn were chance operations to my Fisher-Price record player. Some crazy dude I'd linked with over our mutual interest in IDM, intelligent dance music, and glitch hop at the University of Chicago asked me and my friend's duo, Holga, to open up for an indie hip-hop show on campus. I played it in leather sneakers. I started learning rules and rapidly internalizing them so I could effectively break them and advance things. Somewhere, light years beyond Soulja Boy and 50 Cent and Chingy and Ludacris and Trina, some of whom I would later understand as brilliant. I started to think of hip-hop as more than an aesthetic set of choices, but instead a methodology. In trying to find out more about my favorite hip-hop group, Anti-Pop Consortium, I learned of Charles Mudede, who, in a reflection on the turntable, wrote, Scratch 5. To replay a record with your hands is different from playing an instrument with your hands. The one object the turntable says to the hand, I must complete my cycle and fulfill that which is recorded on the 12-inch. The other, the musical instrument, says to the hand, if you don't touch me, if you don't pull my strings or strike my keys, I'm nothing. I'm a useless object. The turntable is always rinsed out of sleep by the hand that wants to loop a break or to scratch a phrase. Indeed, even during the performance of the loudest rock song, the instrument is fast asleep in the hands of the thrasher. Scratch 6. The turntable is a repurposed object. It is robbed of its initial essence. But the void is soon refilled by a new essence which finds its meaning, its place in the hip-hop universe, in the service of Scratch 7. A thing, Kant, or implement, Heidegger, or commodity, Marx, that is repurposed does what it is not supposed to do. It is made by the hands of a manufacturer, Kant, an artisan, Heidegger, a laborer, Marx, to perform, and literally disappears into a specific task. But the repurposed object ends up doing something else. Think, if you will, of a film projector, which is used to show a movie. That is its purpose, to show a movie, not to make a movie. A filmmaker uses a camera for that. And yet, this is forced to do. I was enraptured by this idea, figuring out ways to reanimate the powerful concepts of some dead white men for things they never would have imagined. Could the art forms of the black person be read like a repurposed object? Slaves were counted as property and stripped of almost all means to conceive of themselves as anything but, yet something survived, something crucial, and it mutated throughout the generations, sustaining people. Orlando Patterson described the total likeness produced by social death placed upon the Africans. This status continued to the present through the legacies of slavery, the retaliation to the Reconstruction producing Jim Crow laws, and the new Jim Crow era of the present, which includes discrimination educationally as well as economically. The destruction of Black lives in a variety of ways, mediated and otherwise. After reading Frederick Jameson, I would see the hip methodology as the soulful counterpart to postmodern pastiche. But soul, its name itself, a reinterpretation of a Western concept, is too potent to be considered the other side of the coin. De Boer and Kool Herc were doing something different. The other term of 1970s downtown NYC art with hip hop beginning in the same time, but in the boogie down Bronx, South Bronx. See where I'm going here? South side of Chicago, South Bronx, downtown Manhattan. What happens in the global South? If Noam Chomsky was from the Bronx, he would have been assassinated, probably. I said he was from the Bronx. I said, you know what I mean. Twice is a coincidence, or a glitch. 3 times a pattern. So I began making music under the moniker Devin Kenny, built on a premise of an intersection of hip-hop and performance art, sometimes integrating sculpture, printmaking, and other practices into the work. Show an image from that. So this is a kind of album cover that I used on MySpace for the first Devin Kenny record called Kites, for Devin Kenny in the End Summer. So it's like a kite that's made out of some like police barricade sawhorses, which were ubiquitous in New York at the time. They use like steel ones now, but sometimes you can still find these. Doing data word games to construct verses, freestyling over metronome, played as drums, and on and on. Just one moment. Okay. In a lecture at the interdisciplinary seminar, I heard Okwi and Wazar quote, "Modernity is our antiquity." It blew my mind. In the Eurocentric view, the Renaissance was a revamp of the wisdom of the classical period. Some people arguing this being the seeds of modernity. I say Eurocentric because in Africa and South Asia, many practices that began in ancient times were continued and advanced, only later to be reintroduced to Europe after the Crusades. And colonialism as well. Modernism in the contemporary era was looked on in the same way. Perhaps there was something to this. Okwi also talked about ultramodernity or modernism making itself manifest in different contexts of the world differently, with specific eyes towards the impact of colonialism. I want to ask if I want to play a video. Could you play number? It's called 3. Make sure to eat their heart.
Okay, sure. Make sure to eat their heart. Okay, thank you. So, there's my recursion for you.
Thanks.
Back at you.
And if you kill anyone, make sure to eat their heart to gain their courage, their rich, tasty courage.
And following that, could you play number 4? But just play the first 40 seconds of 407 Pin Inc. Tupac back freestyle.
How many seconds?
40 seconds.
I'm already convicted. My whole life has been turned around. I lost every job. I lost everything, every opportunity. I can't get buy cars, can't get rent, can't get none of that. But I'm still a survivor. You know, I'm still coming to court, still smiling, still signing autographs. but soon it will go crazy. You know what I'm saying? And it's up to the world. The world, you know, America eats its babies. No matter what y'all think about me, I'm still your child. You know what I'm saying? You can't just turn me off like that.
Studio Workout Volume 2. No curatorial comments. No provenance. I guess I'm just jumping scans. Tupac.
And following that, could you play 8B? Eat. It's like an M4V file.
This guy?
Yes.
I can't stop. It's out of my control. Where you go? We're out of food. I'm sorry. When I'm upset, I get hungry.
We're all upset, Bobby.
But you're upset together, and I'm upset all by myself. I see things clearly now. I'm gonna grow up without anyone to love, and die friendless and alone like Weird Al Yankovic. I won't stand in your way. When the time comes, I want you to eat me.
You'd do that for us?
Of course I would. You're my best friend. My body is my gift to you. But it wouldn't have to be if you'd left us some of those chips.
So true. All right. In an attempt to extricate and learn more about the non-Western foundations of hip-hop, I started imagining its driving force not as solely post-industrial and as a response, but with its own drive and autonomy, tied to a kind of animism, posing the aura of a cultural product as a kind of connecting and re-envisioning the past, cannibalizing it, but differently than European modernists had cannibalized African, Asiatic, Polynesian, and other indigenous peoples' cultural practices. This was done in an honorific ritual fashion. Some things building off of this idea. And I guess I'll show a couple of those. Whoop. Sorry, actually, this is the wrong mode. Whoop. Lessons. There we go. So this is one. It's called Exercises in the Contemporary Animism 1 for Charles. This one is Exercises in the Contemporary Animism 2 for Okwi. Okay. I was already well aware of overlaps in capoeira and hip-hop dance, breaking, but also became fascinated at the smile on the capoeirista's face, what one may call the coon grin, and the idea that a dance could mask a lethal weapon or a training process for those seeking to be liberated from bondage. Capoeira was both a dance and a martial art used by the Africans made slaves in Brazil. Sometime after that, I would learn about the Cannibalist Manifesto, Oswald de Andrade's Manifesto Antropófago, and which I'll read a bit from. I asked a man what the law was. He answered that it was the guarantee of the exercise of possibility. That man was named Galimatias. I ate him. Galimatias is nonsense. Roots, 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 roots. We want the Carib Revolution, greater than the French Revolution, the unification of all productive revolts for the progress of humanity. Without us, Europe wouldn't even have its meager declaration of the rights of man. The golden age heralded by America, the golden age and all the girls. The idea here is that concurrent with the dehumanization, rape, murder, and exploitation of indigenous and African peoples in the Americas, the philosophical underpinnings of European humanity or European humanism and like consciousness was like sketched out by contrast. And a lot of those ideas were like were being like formulated at the same time as the beginning of this discovery, quote unquote. We already had justice, the codification of vengeance, science, the codification of magic, cannibalism, the permanent transformation of the taboo into a totem. It was because we never had grammars, nor collections of old plants, and we never knew what urban, suburban, frontier, and continental were. Lazy in the Mapa Mundi of Brazil. A participatory consciousness, a religious rhythmics. The spirit refuses to conceive a spirit without a body, anthropomorphism, need for the cannibalistic vaccine, to maintain our equilibrium against meridian religions and against outside inquisitions. So there basically is like no mind-body split, no saved and unsaved. That's kind of what that's getting at. But those who came here weren't crusaders. They were fugitives from a civilization we are eating because we are strong and vindictive like the Djibouti. Down with memory as a source of custom, the renewal of personal experience. Throughout the manifesto, in multiple iterations, the maligned part of the Andrés culture and heritage was acknowledged as a source of beauty, intelligence, wisdom, fierceness, and life. But also, the excavation became a foundation to build upon. Down with memory as a source of custom. In one interpretation, we can see a kinship with a hip-hop methodology, which allows the practitioners to reconnect with the spirit of previous generations. We see a return of call and response, a forefronting of rhythmic innovation, the public outdoor dance, an emphasis on communal spirit and communal activity in the block party or the jam or the cipher. And if we consider graffiti, we see also like a rethinking of visual art and its venue of reception. Shifting it from a place of quiet contemplation and regard to the handball court, the daily train, the dilapidated wall, the hidden tunnel, the back of the jacket. So all basically these are all it's activated and for like public use. So in that way, like the static or like the static visual art becomes a little bit more like music or I don't know. Sculpture or costuming or other things that can be activated by groups. Somehow in all this, I got wrapped up in a search for the truth. I mean, it's understandable if you grew up in a society that can build institutions on falsehoods like the inferiority of certain ethnic groups, gender expression, sexual orientations, etc. If you're penetrated by lies constantly, some of seemingly no consequence and others that can lead to fatalities, wallets, cell phones, hairbrushes, toys, etc., read as handguns and threats to the safety of others. The search for its opposite can be really desirable, right? But the tools I would acquire to aid me in this search were found in the network. Either one's pre-existing or the network of connections I would make between experiences and artifacts. From there, we arrived to the scalene triangle of the Griot, the Parrhesiac, and the troll. In the late 80s and early 90s, what's called the golden age of hip-hop, not only for the vast array of stylistic innovations taking place, but the plethora of independent companies leading the charge in bringing hip-hop further into the national spotlight, not just through music, but also fashion, journalism, etc. After a decade of being called novelty throwaway music and a culture of ghetto dwellers, there was a burgeoning interest in Pan-African thought amongst musicians. This was also occurring during the fight to dismantle apartheid in South Africa. De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Queen Latifah, Sister Soulja, Public Enemy, and a wide variety of others pushed this forward. One group, Los Angeles' Freestyle Fellowship, would release a now-classic album entitled Inner City Griots in 1993, laying the foundation for the careers of AC Alone, Micah 9, and others, as well as a whole approach to hip-hop that would later be picked up and built upon by Kendrick Lamar, Bus Driver, and many, many more. I'll just continue, yeah. I would hear people drawing connections between the figure of the griot and the hip-hop MC fairly often when I became a head. Found throughout Central and Western Africa, but with similar figures also present in North Africa and elsewhere, they may be known as Igio for the more, Gwewel or Gewel in Wolof, Mabo or Gaulo in Fulbe, Jali in Mandinka, Jeli in Maninka and Bamana, Jesere or Jare in Soninke, Jesere in Songhai, and Moroki in Haus. On the one hand, the griot, lots of controversy on even using this term, partially because its origin is unclear, and it may be a mispronunciation by Portuguese traders that spread to the French that was then reintegrated. But regardless, the griot is a role that is not gender specific, but it is hereditary and almost a class of its own within the community. They may become very wealthy and be celebrated in public, like Bazumana Sissoko, who I'll show a picture of right now. So this is a picture of the person I'm talking about. But many griot also face prejudice or are held at an arm's length because they hold a kind of power that other more modern political leaders desire. They function as a master of ceremonies at celebrations in the community, including weddings, births, naming, the installation of chiefs, not unlike Jay-Z and Beyonce at the inauguration, and times of well-wishing. They also function as the historian of the village, as seen dramatized here in Roots, where Alex Haley, played by James Earl Jones, encounters a village elder. I want to play like a video clip. Could you play, it's number 6.
Number 6.
Okay, coming right up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay.
And special thanks to Irish Moss.
Number 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He said he got him a son called Omar.
Genau.
I don't know.
Bi Omar amee ñetti fukki at
When he had 30 reigns,
mu takka Binta Keba
he married Binta Keba,
ku ko amal ñeneenti doom yu góor
who gave him 4 sons.
ñu tuddee leen
And they were named
Kunta,
Kunta,
Lamin,
Lamin,
Swadu, ak Mali.
and Madi.
Ak mi nga xamee ne Geewaay buuri tubaab yi ñëw nañ ci réew mi.
And about that time, the king's soldiers
doom ju
came.
góor ju mag bi Kunta
The eldest son, Kunta,
ki ne dafa dogi garab
left the village to cut the tree
ne dafa jagal sabar
to make himself a drum.
ca lañ ko bi
And that was the last time that he was seen.
What? Say that again. Tell him to say that again. Tell him to say that again.
What happened?
doom ju góor ju mag Kunta
The eldest son,
génn ci
Kunta,
dëkk bi
left the village
dem ne dafa dogi dafa jagal sabar
to make a drum. And that was the last time that he was seen.
My God. Again.
What?
doom ju góor ju mag bi
The eldest son,
Kunta
Kunta,
génn ci dëkk bi
left the village
dem ne dafa dogi garab
to cut
ne
a tree
dafa jagal sabar
to make himself a drum.
ca lañ ko bi gis.
And that was the last time that he was seen.
And he said
You know?
he was out in the woods, not far from the village, cutting down a tree to make himself a drum.
Dafa demoon ci àll ba pour dogi garab pour def sabar.
And
Ba tey
doing that, that's when the slavers touched him. And he never see his mama and his papa again in his whole life. You old African! I found you! Come to Kente! I found you! I
Yo African rekultikete. Gisnala. Next Sunday, Allah. Nekeni tu Muhammad. Praise be to Allah. For one long lost to us, whom Allah has returned. Welcome, son of King. Welcome to your village. He says, we are you, and you are us.
So in a similar fashion, the rapper or the MC is charged with being the voice of the voiceless, skillfully telling the stories of people in the neighborhood, painting a portrait of the happenings, and having a proximity to a variety of people, especially those maligned or, you know, admired for whatever reason, like the drug dealer, the pimp, sex worker, the gang member, etc. The griot also holds the song heritage of the village, not only in voice but in instrument as well. But across a wide variety of cultures, the kinds of activities that the griot is responsible for is wide, leading some scholars to fight for more specific terms. With that said, and with acknowledgement of the wide set of roles taken by the griot, I posit them as not like the rapper, but instead the network hub, which I don't want to say that it only refers to like telecommunications networks, but since that's the like one of the most like dominant structures, I think that works as a fine metaphor. So the griot, like an aggregator, they're available to make declarations of happy birthday, congratulations, etc., but also be a town crier, sharing news as well as music, humor, and other means to build and reinvigorate community. Seeing Alex Haley nearly pass out after hours of listening to the verifiable like database of knowledge possessed by the elder, one can certainly imagine the experience of scroll fatigue, or even better, disengaged channel surfing. So I'm going to show like a image, which is going to lead us into the next section. So this is a tweet that basically Kanye West made a tweet saying that his tweets are his art. Then, you know, Richard Prince responded, and then a bunch of other people responded, me included. I responded to Richard Prince by saying, if you're into appropriation, you probably want to check out this woman named Sherry Levine. She basically invented appropriation. And then I was like, oh yeah, actually, Elaine Sturdivant's really dope too. And then we had this like back and forth where he replied, you know, to me, to this other guy named Barrett. Shout out to Barrett for this screen cap, and to Kanye. Don't know nothing about appropriation. Art about art, not a fan. I'm all about Parrhesia. And then he deleted this tweet. So. I choose Parrhesiac instead of Parrhesiast because it rhymes with aphrodisiac and amnesiac. The idea is sexy, but it's a way of being that we've forgotten about, or that perhaps never existed, or perhaps always existed, but only within those communities pushed down. Parrhesia is a kind of truth-telling that happens at great risk to the teller, perhaps even death. The following is excerpted from a compilation of tape recordings made of 6 lectures delivered in English by Michel Foucault at the University of California at Berkeley in the fall term of 1983. There are 2 types of Parrhesia which we must distinguish. First, there's a pejorative sense of the word, not very far from chattering, and which consists in saying any or everything one has in mind without qualification. This pejorative sense occurs in Plato, for example, as a characterization of the bad democratic constitution, where everyone has the right to address himself to his fellow citizens and to tell them anything. Most of the time, however, Parrhesia does not have this pejorative meaning in the classical text, but rather a positive one. The Parrhesiastes is not only sincere and says what is his opinion, but his opinion is also the truth. He says what he knows to be true. The second characteristic of Parrhesia, then, is that there is always an exact coincidence between belief and truth. Discourse and truth, the problematization of Parrhesia. In addition, Parrhesia can be seen as another kind of cynicism, where one exposes the hypocrisy of structures taken for granted for the participants in those structures. In discussing Parrhesia, Rob Horning writes, authority is pre-distributed and reinscribed by what is said by the performers. Performativity, then, is about preserving the status quo rather than challenging it. Cultivating a self means cultivating confrontational or controversial things to say, and access to audiences that will be startled or affronted by them. One must seek out explosive truth about the world or about others, or contrive situations to be able to manufacture such potent truths. In other words, the court jester, on reaching the parrhesiastical threshold, is sent to death or the dungeon or for torturing. So they play in the space between. Or they soften their approach to a light cynicism like this, which I'm going to show like a brief example. And I think it's important we should like think about Parrhesia in relationship to some of the, current events happening in yeah. Could you play number 8?
Sure. Yes.
It's an MP4.
Let me start this way.
So this is just to recap. This is like a light cynicism. This is like a light cynicism. This is like a weak Parrhesia.
Which one?
8. Sexy versus.
Sounds good to me.
What's up, guys? I'm Joey Salad, and this is the breastfeeding public social experiment part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Sexy versus breastfeeding. Let's see how people react.
I'm Kayla. How are you?
I'm Tammy. Nice to meet you.
Okay. I get that. Actually, you probably follow me.
Say something yesterday.
How's it going? I'm the new mom. I can't feel anything on this boob anymore. Oh, wow.
That's disgusting. I don't appreciate your tipping out like that. So why is this disgusting? Gross, her tits are out. But her boobs are out too. That's okay. That's okay. That's not what it is. That's fine. It's not real. See, this is something natural, and that's just sexy. So you think that's okay? That's somewhere else. That's not what we're here. So if you have a problem with that movie out, you should have a problem with that movie out too.
Boom!
Why you guys do that in public? That's disgusting. Why is that okay, but that's not okay? Because that's hot, and that's disgusting. So that's okay because it's hot, but this is not okay because it's something natural and you think it's disgusting? Yeah. All right. That's what you think then. Thank you guys for watching. Please give this video a like and share. Don't forget to subscribe to see more videos just like this. Comment below your opinion about public breastfeeding. Let me know what you think. I'm Joey Sowers, and thanks for watching.
Shout out Joey Salads, I guess.
Shout out Joey Salads, I guess.
So you're reading him as a light cynic, as a light Parrhesiac?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he clearly, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Horning goes on. The cynic's courage insists on getting people to condemn, reject, despise, and insult the very manifestation of what they accept, or claim to accept at the level of principle. In all the meanings of the word, one exposes one's life. That is to say, one displays it and risks it. One risks it by displaying it. And it is because one displays it that one risks it. So, Copwatch, Diamond Reynolds, Ramsey Orta, and many other examples like come to mind in that regard. In knowing I was the descendant of people who are treated as less than people, made akin to highly skilled machines made of flesh through forced physical labor, child rearing, and a variety of other activities, I'd imagine the best way to write things would be to weaponize my mind and thoughts, my cognitive abilities, being able to think and communicate, the thing which was banned or discouraged. This drew me to the Situationist International, Hans Hake, Andrea Fraser, William Popel, Martha Rossler, Sherry Levine, Amiri Baraka, Waleed Rod. Definitely in that aspirational, using the master's tools to undo the master's house mode, to borrow from Bell Hooks. But I also love Sabotage by the Beastie Boys. I didn't know then that sabotage originally didn't mean an outright destruction of the mechanisms of exploitation, one that could be swapped out easily, but rather a specialized breaking, an undoing in such a way that a scab couldn't fix it, an undoing that would require disassembly or revamping of the whole factory to make it right, a breaking that required the intimate knowledge of how things worked. Computer bugs used to refer to actual insects nesting among the circuits and vacuum tubes. So we land on the troll. I want to show another video. Could you play number 9? Boondocks?
Yes, I can. Just one moment. Here we go. Oh, man, I can't wait for niggas to start hating. I can't wait. So you judge your success by the amount of ill will you generate from those around you. Hey, if niggas ain't mad at you, then you doing something wrong. By that definition, then, you have a very bright future. Thanks, man.
And could you also play number 10? 10:05, Don't Feed the Trolls.
I'd be happy. Oh, okay. All of it?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
To the right.
How do you guys do it?
To the right.
The right?
The volume.
Oh, Okay, sorry.
Under the bridge, under the bridge, under the bridge, under the bridge. Sometimes I get alright, just to get alright. Some of these mates who call my favorite, and I can't get by now. Your share, your hair, your head still me, but there's no time to cry. But I make them scream, so you shouldn't be. But I make them scream, just you shouldn't be.
In games of truth, Horning states, the truth teller gains a self and agency over it that is measurable only in terms of the person addressed's loss of security. There is no place where it is legible, no other reference point for measuring achieved self. In other words, you know you have succeeded in telling truths and gained status or ontological stability only if the other is discomfited or seems thrown into confusion. This is the point of trolling up. The internet was predicated on all participants coexisting on a level playing field, able to distribute and share knowledge without the previous gatekeepers of status or affiliation to slow things down. Perhaps one of the main benefits of using usernames rather than real names. Trolling takes that utopian possibility and throws it by the wayside. Everybody want to be a Socrates, but nobody want to be a Socrates. Trolling is a destructive way of addressing the ambivalent state of being that is life online. That is, being connected to millions and even billions of people simultaneously, but being incredibly isolated, separated from the nuance of subtle body language, body odor, touch, taste, etc. Trolling as it exists now is not Parrhesia and cannot be considered its nearest neighbor, because Parrhesia is an all or nothing affair, and trolling, full of rhetorical flourish, even in its brevity, loses its potential to rupture because of the desire for likes, virality, etc. It's hope for some modicum of acknowledgement, and positive acknowledgement, kind of hazing or sparring amongst a small self-selecting community, like when your struggling bubble letter throw-ups gets covered by a complex. It now becomes part of the overall dominant landscape of mainstream network culture. In the same way that having pictures of yourself on early social media accounts at one time was seen as anathema, and photographing your breakfast was seen as narcissistic or hatefully banal, new genres and modes of reception have grown up around these once unacceptable techniques. Back then, they didn't want me. Now I'm hot, they all on me. So in my own practice, I try to consider the pros and cons of using particular aesthetics and ways of working, in particular ways of communication. So how does an audience connect with art that looks like art? How does an audience learn from art that looks like annual reports or other forms? How do I engage with these ways of exchanging information? Considering the role of the ritual, not just in building community, but also in defining an approach to life started before I began focusing primarily on art. But it continues today, even while I'm considering other aspects of our shared responsibilities, our shared cultural inheritances. I grew up in a low-income public housing on a threshold between ghetto and college town. I was blessed enough to have a guardian for whom education was crucial, so I was privileged to be able to attend magnet elementary schools and high schools in Chicago after testing into them. I had to take the role of the cultural ambassador, which I at times resented. In school, I was constantly aware that many other students had a plenty that I didn't have, not the least of which was a constant sense of safety and ease in their own neighborhoods. I was riddled with questions. I wondered why so many people from the neighborhood who looked like me and had similar backgrounds entered gangs or sold drugs or just hung out on the streets, innocently fraternizing until they ended up in the system, politically dead, or slain by rivals. I couldn't believe that it was because of, this idea that their parents didn't care enough to keep them off the streets. There must have been something else at play, beyond luck or blessing. So now, as an adult with a practice, a delineated set of concerns, and an assortment of tools and resources, I take on the role of the critic, the artist, the curator, the musician, the director, the editor, the DJ, and the poet. A diverse set of approaches which mirrors the multiplicity of personas and roles one takes with their profiles and avatars online, but also mimics the process of code switching and any number of other methods taken on to survive in spaces not built for your benefit. So I have a hand of flesh pointing at the gloved white hand of the hyperlink cursor, fully aware of the 3 fingers pointing back at me. Thank you.
Are you interested in taking some questions, Devin, or no?
Sure.
Sure.
Cool. I have a couple, but I wanted to open it to some guests first.
I'll turn the lights on.
Yeah, so you can look at the people talking here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for, well, I don't know if it was awesome, but thanks for letting me try it out.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Mike will be fine. He's stronger. Yeah. So if anyone has questions, you can ask everyone. I can do that. So I guess Ellie wants me to ask my question first. To encourage, I guess because people are awkward about asking the first question. I have a couple. Let me try to pick one that could be maybe generative. There was this tweet by this African theorist named Kaguro.
Wait, sorry, I passed by.
There was this tweet by this African theorist named Kaguro that they put out last week that said, well, it was part of a long conversation about policing black sound. And their tweet series was about how you can put this into a longer historical overview, right? And the idea of like policing black sound online, on Twitter, but also in public spaces and clubs. You can go as far back as like banning African drums and stuff like that. And the tweet specifically that I'm thinking of is African drums were the first social media, right? And kind of in line with this idea that the African diaspora was the first cybernetic structure of governance, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess my question would be in terms of that idea of drums as social media, drums as like organizers of public space, and as dividers of labor in the ways that they spread their messages. When you think of that in terms of the idea of the repurposing that you talked about, turntables, do you find that there's a sort of like longer historical view of that repurposing that isn't specifically about like the digital or the the sort of robotic or technological? Does that make sense?
I guess I'm not. I'm just gonna say something, and that connects. I mean, somehow it makes me think about. Okay. Yodeling. Smoke signals. And drums. Right. So the thing with like drums is that not only can you communicate and like create like an environment rapidly and within like close proximity, but also like in long distances as well. And I guess I guess I kind of want to make some sort of like comparison between that and like yodeling, but I guess yodeling usually wasn't used in like a community building way initially, but then it became used in that way. But then it's also like hard to know what the initial use of the drum was, like whether it being a community building thing for like rituals or like dances, or whether it was for like communicating amongst like long distances, like sending a message like Morse code or something over a long distance. I don't know. I'm not sure which it was used for, but I think the point that you make is a really sharp one, and it definitely relates to like the turntable, because basically the turntable makes a piece of media into, like, the turntable and the drum machine are like really related, because it kind of like it makes a record player into a drum, basically, because you're like you're breaking it down rhythmically, like along particular like grids, which are made within not only the grooves but also the like formally within a track, I guess. So one could say a turntable is a drum in a way. Yeah. I mean, you can use it in a way that is like a drum. So, and drums are old, way older than turntables. So yeah, I guess you could, I think what you said sounds about right. Sounds good.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, but I realized as I asked it that it's kind of hard to come up with an answer to that, because like before technology, it's kind of hard to have records.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what drums are useful. We know what a TV was used for because we have the records of its invention and distribution, right?
Totally.
We don't have that other stuff before some moment, but I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, maybe like piggybacking off of that kind of topic of digital and then historic importance. I really enjoyed what I'm kind of in a SparkNotes version, like interpreting as viewing an oral historian as a network center and node. If that's correct, as like a
I think that's a very good summation.
Yeah. So I mean, like within that way, I guess it's like kind of going off the records thing. I guess it's like a record of use, and a record of usefulness, especially within the specific context of that clip from Roots. It's this moment in which this historic technology that is extremely useful becomes useful to someone who's affected by the like modern post-colonialist and colonialist effects of that. I don't know, it's this moment of it coming back into use. I almost like correlate that also with the Richard Prince screenshot and the ability for these like records to be deleted and policed in that same way. I mean,
Sure.
So I guess like within specifically the necessity to preserve how Blackness is being deployed and celebrated, and like by Black communities through this like diaspora connected by the network. I guess I'm really interested in how you see oral histories maybe functioning, living within this thing that like is the network system, that is the internet, because it obviously exists in an important way, way far back, but now it's in this like very in a higher capacity to be policed and deleted in this form. So I'd just be interested in your thoughts maybe on that.
That's a great question. Real quick, responding to what you said, like, I think it's I read this this book by Jeff Chang called like Can't Stop, Won't Stop. It's like about hip hop. It's really good book. But basically, there's a section where he's talking about Chuck D from Public Enemy, and he's talking about his like start in hip hop, and saying that when he was getting started, like in the like, you know, early, like first hearing it as a kid, like in the late 70s, early 80s, there was never like, people never thought about like recording it, and as like, because it was a jam, it would go for like 4 hours. You know, people would think like that's hip hop. Like the entire thing is hip hop, not the recording. So people were like, how do you put hip hop on a record? It's like so long. I mean, there were means to record it, but it wasn't like, yeah, there was no like, you know, there just wasn't the technology. There was no like Mixcloud in those days. And that also like changed the way people like thought about it. So it's weird. Like I see that like older model as also being connected to like models which would be used in societies that only used writing in ritual manners, like rather than using writing for like the recording of everything. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is that I think it's kind of a bummer. oral history, oral structures right now, because okay, it coexists with these networks which are owned by corporate entities that don't give a damn about young Black people. So like people are like coming up with slang, they're coming up with codes, they're coming up with ways of getting through the day, they're coming up with ways of expressing themselves, and those things are being shared and distributed via, you know, the network, via a social internet. So via WorldStar, via Twitter, Instagram, whatever, Yik Yak, whatever the fuck. Like, and there's also like a big pull towards figuring out a way of like monetizing that. So it might not be done for its own sake. Like people are trying to come up with slang so that they can like get paid off of it. And so you're like producing something for, you know, a set of like powers that control the structure, but you don't actually get the full like benefit of it. You're like producing gold so you can get back like a bag of like breadcrumbs or something, you know what I mean? Or maybe you get a bag of breadcrumbs every day, you know, that'd be so sick. So I think that's kind of what's, yeah, but which is not to say that it's completely bleak and dire, but it is to say that the bleak part runs simultaneously with the autonomous part that I like personally like know and love about like oral cultures. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's yeah. Thank you so much. That's like such a.
I actually kind of had a follow-up question because I was, as you were describing that, you know, context and historical condition, I thought about this idea from Derrida in grammatology. He talks about how historically, like writing has been seen, writing and writing culture have kind of been seen as imitations of oral culture, and the oral has always been privileged in Western society, right? And that's interesting to think about in terms of colonization and stuff, but also specifically in terms of orality versus textuality and the cybernetic, and in the diaspora, we could say even, right? Because you mentioned this idea of how writing was more ritual or more sort of sacral, right? It's used in contexts that are more ritualistic than contexts that are more conversational or vernacular.
Yeah.
And so thinking about this sort of textuality versus orality distinction, and the seeing writing and writing culture as parasitic on orality, specifically like white male orality, right? I wondered if you had anything to say in terms of like going back to the Paul Mooney sort of
Oh yeah. Yeah, shout out to everyone who got that.
The Socratic flip of Paul Mooney, right? Everybody wants to be Socrates, but nobody wants to be Socrates because Socrates is a figment. He's a cipher. He's not real.
Right.
Right. He's just text versus Plato's oral vivification of Socrates and turning him into an effigy, so to speak, right? That makes sense as a question.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you put it that way, because I always would think of textuality being like valued higher, like being valued over orality, in the sense that civilizations that didn't have a lot of writing around, or that they couldn't find any written records, they assumed that they were like oh, they're primitive because they don't write down how many fucking goats they have. But yeah, but I think the point that you bring up, I guess it depends on from whose like perspective you're looking at. You're looking from, I guess. But there's an interesting thing that like writing, what I was learning is that like some of the first like texts within like ancient Greece, like writing was just like a script. So like if you had a book or something, it would be like all the words are on like the page without any spaces, and it's like you would you'd ask your slave to like read you this thing. So it's just like writing was just like a I don't know, it was like a way of getting someone to like say something, basically. And it's like earliest, like, and writing was always to be done aloud. And apparently I'm trying to think which one, but it's like St. Augustine of something. One of the St. Augustines, he was like a monk, and there was this whole to-do because he would like read in his head. They're like, whoa, you're like reading, but you're not saying the words aloud. Like, this is crazy. And they were like, oh, this is a miracle. He's truly been touched by the Holy Spirit. Blah, blah, etc. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Cool, thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
We could talk about print-on-demand T-shirts. Like, what's the deal with that?
Boom, 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 boom.
Have you made yourself one?
Say what?
Have you made yourself a print-on-demand T-shirt?
Yeah, it feels really good. It's like very soft. I don't know. It's weird. Weird. What else? Yeah, I guess it's. Oh, right. Actually, I write tweets. My Twitter is Devin Kenny.
We all just noticed your watch. It's like flick of the wrist.
Oh yeah.
Shit.
It's that sun, yeah.
Yeah, it's like what? That's the LACMA money. No, I'm playing. Sorry.
But yeah, Devin Kenny. Got stuff on SoundCloud also. Bandcamp, Devin Kenny, KKENNY, DEVIN, first name. Yeah, I guess that's. I was. This whole talk kind of got charged in a different way. when thinking about Philando Castile's murdering by the police, and the way that Facebook was used as as a space to like live speak this, just via the allowing the camera and the audio, I guess the mic on the telephone's camera, to like not only pick up the police, but her boyfriend and her own speech and the child's speech. And I was very hit by the way that she was very like lucid and very calm, and had like incredibly strong mode of speaking in like a really horrendous time. It's my friend Rafia Santana, she was like, oh yeah, she was probably in shock, which was changing her like speech patterns in that way. But it doesn't read in that. But I was thinking about that in relationship to Parrhesia, and it also made me think about the way in which, the Parrhesiac's activity can then be also refolded in to distribution modes that might not necessarily have liberation in mind, might not necessarily have bringing like human spiritual connection in mind. So it can function in like on two different levels. Like when you think about seeing it once, or like I saw it like 10 minutes after it was posted, and then I crying and whatnot, and then it was taken down, and I was thinking that like Facebook was trying to censor it, but in reality they just took it down so they could put this like warning screen on it, and then it was put back up maybe like an hour later or something like that. But it just makes me those horrible like events put this talk into a different like perspective for me, because I'd been thinking about these things before, but I hadn't been thinking about Parrhesia, in other words, is speaking truth to power. That's what it is in short. Oh yeah, and Richard Prince doesn't do that. So fuck him. But regardless, I'm thinking about the ways in which after the Speech Act has been done, it can then be like taken back by power and redirected into something else. I don't think it evacuates all of its like potential, but it does like shift it in some way. So I guess that's the last thing I would say. Oh yeah, I mentioned this thing called Cop Watch. I don't know if that's everywhere, but it's an organization that's in New York and I think in other cities, where people go as like a group and they basically monitor the police. And there's been many instances where like having people present and like filming or videoing or whatever has prevented certain exercises of unnecessary force, which, as we have seen, can result in death. So basically some like lives have been saved because of this one form of like, I don't know, I would say like maybe a kind of collective Parrhesia done by those that are, attempting to like do like a kind of community policing thing. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Devin. Really amazing talk. I do want to say anyone who is black should be careful with those apps because it's dangerous. And anyone who's white should get all of those direct to live stream apps. Like, I'm pretty sure the ACLU has one. You can get it, and whatever you're recording is automatically being uploaded as it records, right? And exactly what you're saying is true, that when a white person is, or even a group of white people are like filming a cop as something's happening, documentation has shown that the cop will stop and will like think about the fact that they're actually being witnessed, and it's not the classic conspiracy of silence and the typical brotherhood of cops protecting each other and lying on reports and stuff like that. So definitely recommend getting that app and making sure that you use your ability to document the mundane to change it, right? Because that's crucial. Yeah, thank you so much, Devin. That was amazing. One clap. And I'll message you in a second. You can tell stuff. And yeah, thank you so much. Take care.